Hi everyone, Ellie here. What comes to mind when we think of power? Usually it's loud, direct, and most importantly, I think, visible. Think warfare, kings, revolutions, elections. But there's another kind of power, one that operates behind the scenes. One often historically held by women. And just because it's quiet doesn't mean it's not strong. That's the topic of the video today. I welcome you to my living room where you can see there's baby toys all over the place. I hope that doesn't detract from the seriousness of this video. Let's get started. The essence of soft power is co-opting people rather than coercing them. There's a book called Soft Power: The Means to Success in a World of Politics by Joseph Nye. The author coined the term soft power from a country's ability to attract and persuade, whereas hard power comes from a nation's ability to coerce through military strength or through economic might. Soft power, instead, comes from the attractiveness of its culture, its political ideals, its policies. He says, soft power rests on the ability to shape the preferences of others. Now, in this video, we're not speaking about nations, but rather people. Often people who shape history and nations, women specifically. But we're going to call it quiet power. But you get the idea. Think of the mothers who raised kings, the queens who brokered peace through marriage, the mistresses who held court influence, and the first ladies who shaped domestic and foreign policy. This video is about the women in history that feminists often paint as adjacent to power, when in fact, they were shaping the course of it. I recently came across a video of a content creator that shall not be named, arguing for the reasons women should be kept from power, from having a voice, to be kept on the confines of the home. The comments joked that they simply respected women so much that they just want to spare us the difficulty of thinking, from the stresses of it, that we should only dedicate ourselves to running a household with children, as if that requires no thinking. LOL. I don't know, maybe they think thinking is stressful. I certainly don't. I won't deny that there is such a thing as decision fatigue, yes, and that a lot of women in our modern times may be making some bad decisions, okay? But that's a human thing, and that's another topic. Today, we're going to look at quiet power, how women have used relationships, emotion, intellect, intuition, and influence to move empires. And in this video, I will also criticize feminists, yes. But first, let's look at these women: Eleanor Roosevelt, Catherine de Medici, and a few lesser-known examples that challenge what power even means. In the video I mentioned, there were also women who were saying things like, as a woman, I would gladly vote for the 19th Amendment to be removed. You guys are so smart. I know us women can be so neurotic. Oh my god, I much prefer working under a male boss. Female bosses are awful. Please refer to my last video on pick-me's. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And with that, let's look into her influence. Eleanor is the one who keeps me grounded. Without her, I would be lost in the turmoil of politics. Most of us know Eleanor Roosevelt as the First Lady of the United States during Franklin D. Roosevelt's presidency. But that title barely scratches the surface. Eleanor redefined the role of First Lady. She was her husband's closest advisor, often standing in for him at events when his health prevented it, and was deeply involved in policy discussions. Behind closed doors, she advocated for civil rights, women's labor reforms, and poverty alleviation. Agree or disagree, this was power. Franklin himself is known to have said that he trusted her judgment more than most of his cabinet. He said, "Eleanor was my most trusted advisor and my greatest inspiration." He also said, "She gave me strength when I had none and wisdom when I was lost." She wrote daily columns, held press conferences, and shaped public opinion in subtle but powerful ways. But officially, she held no elected office. She simply wielded influence, and people listened. After her husband's death, she became the first chairperson of the UN Commission on Human Rights and helped draft the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That's not a passive partner. That's a power broker in her own right. And yet, even in feminist circles at the time, Eleanor's influence is sometimes downplayed. Some early feminists prioritized the pursuit of a visible, traditionally masculine power, like holding office or commanding armies, while quietly dismissing the political force of someone like Eleanor, who operated behind the scenes. This speaks to a broader issue. Even those advocating for women's rights sometimes fail to recognize the value of quiet power, of soft power, of what women before them did to shape history. And we can go back, all the way back, to 16th century France. Her power was indirect, but no less decisive. Catherine de Medici, an Italian noblewoman who became Queen of France through marriage. And she's often remembered with suspicion, sometimes really unfairly. Protestants across Europe painted her as a Machiavellian villain. She was portrayed as power-hungry and an evil mother, or a Black Widow figure. She was accused of witchcraft because of her fascination with mysticism, blamed for a Parisian massacre where thousands of Protestants were killed, although in reality, there's no proof of her involvement. But beneath the myths and propaganda was a woman who exercised immense soft power. In fact, she was actively working to prevent civil war between the Protestants and the Catholics in France. She was pragmatic, she was intelligent, and very, very villainized due to the difficulty of trying to manage a very difficult and fractured kingdom during one of France's most violent times. And as an Italian, as queen consort, then regent for her sons, she ruled again during one of the most turbulent times in French history. She carefully navigated religious wars between Catholics and Protestants, orchestrated political marriages to try to broker peace, and used court culture and patronage as tools of diplomacy. Catherine didn't lead armies, but she placed generals. She didn't deliver speeches, but she pulled the strings. Her influence was cultural, political, and psychological. She promoted the arts, stabilized a fractured monarchy, and worked tirelessly, yes, sometimes ruthlessly, to protect her children's right to rule. Her power was often veiled, but it was real and long-lasting. She held together a very fragile France through a dangerous era, not through brute force, but with persistence, persuasion, and an unmatched understanding of court politics. Some historians said, quote, "She governed the realm with prudence, patience, and tact rather than brute force." These stories aren't rare. Throughout history, women have ruled states, commanded diplomacy, raised heirs, educated rulers, and swayed kings. But because they didn't do it through official declarations or battlefields, their power was seen as secondary or not seen at all. Consider, for example, Empress Josephine, wife to Napoleon Bonaparte, known for her grace, her charm, and mastery of court politics. She helped Napoleon gain acceptance among elites despite his revolutionary origins. Then there's Roxelana, the wife of Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, who advised him on state matters and helped him orchestrate foreign alliances. And then there's the influential Saloniers in Enlightenment France, who curated intellectual gatherings that shaped the age's most radical ideas. None of these women held titles like general or prime minister, but they shaped the world just the same. It's time to ask, why do we only respect visible, aggressive, dominating power? Or why do we only remember that? Women's influence has often looked different. Persuasive rather than coercive, nurturing rather than dominating, strategic rather than brute force. But that doesn't mean it's any less effective. In fact, sometimes it's even more effective. Every wife knows about the idea of planting a seed in her husband's mind so that he can come up with the idea himself later. We see that on My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Now, even among feminist thinkers, there has historically been a tendency to dismiss traditionally feminine forms of influence as weak or submissive. The push for women to enter the workforce, lead militaries, or dominate boardrooms, while not inherently bad, sometimes came at the cost of devaluing our other strengths: caretaking, diplomacy, emotional intelligence, and relational influence. In doing so, we might have inadvertently echoed the same systems we were trying to critique in the first place. Their efforts came with the idea that soft power was inadequate or even non-existent. But raising a future king is power. Guiding a president's policy is power. Choosing not to destroy an enemy when you could, also power. So, when we teach history, when we remember legacies, we must widen our lens. Women weren't just muses, wives, or daughters. They were shapers of fate. Now, with that said though, I have another video about queenly reigns, because I've often heard that queens were just more prone to warfare, etc., etc. So I'm gonna link that over here. That's another side of this story. With that said, guys, please like and subscribe. I encourage healthy debate, and I'll see you next time.